Today's video is brought to you by Raycon and their wireless everyday earbuds. Raycons are great. I've been testing them every night when I go for my walks, where I usually listen to either an audiobook or my podcast. They're great because if I forget to charge them, Raycons have a 32-hour battery life, and they're always comfortable even for long periods. They come with multiple gel tips, and unlike other brands, they don't stick out of your ears. Raycons also start at half the price of other premium audio brands, but sound just as good. If you don't believe me, you can try them out yourself because Raycons come with a 45-day happiness guarantee. So whether you want earbuds to go to the gym and work out or just listen to music while working, right now you can go to buyraycon.com/eck to get 15% off your Raycon purchase. Again, that's reliability, premium quality, all backed by a 45-day happiness guarantee. Thank you Raycon for sponsoring today's video. Now on with the content. Hey guys, this is Justin. Hello and welcome to another video. Something a little bit different today. I saw an interesting versus prompt on Twitter that I thought I would tackle. If you don't already follow me on Twitter, consider doing so because I already gave my preliminary thoughts on this matchup, but I thought it was worthy of a quick video. Let me know if you guys like these kind of videos or not. So this prompt came from T'Challa Fett, who says, I want to see a little chaos here. 4 apprentices at their prime walk into the same room, only one can leave. Who is the last one standing? With pictures of Darth Maul, Kylo Ren, Count Dooku, and Asajj Ventress. So before I even give my take, which I do think will be a little bit controversial, I want you guys to give your thoughts without doing any research or thinking about it down in the comments right now. Who do you think will win? And maybe even in what order will the 4 sort of end up? For this versus matchup, I'm not going to do it as like a grand battle royale. I'm just going to figure out which one I think is the strongest and assume that they'll come out ahead. Alright, so let's do a bit of profile on these 4 fighters, and first up we have Darth Maul. Darth Maul is, if nothing else, great at surviving, but he also proved himself to be incredibly deadly in combat. I'd say his greatest feat is still from the Phantom Menace, where he takes on Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn, and comes away with, we'll say, a half victory. I think a lot of what Maul does afterwards in the Clone Wars is impressive, but in a different way. He shows an ability to survive, to work the underground, and even to fight. He has, of course, many other duels with Jedi throughout the Clone Wars, but I think Maul is very different from a character like Count Dooku, and to be fair, Darth Maul's portrayal has varied somewhat, but for me, I sort of go by Darth Plagueis. I think that gives the most accurate description of how Palpatine saw Maul and how Maul truly was as a fighter. Palpatine sees Maul not as a true Sith, but as a wild animal, an attack dog. He is so successful, especially I think in that first battle with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, because no one was expecting such ferocity. And I think he also benefits from being the first Sith to emerge in 1,000 years. Even though, as I said, I don't think he ever truly was a Sith, but that's also true of Dooku in my opinion. And obviously Ventress and Kylo as well. This prompt is interesting because it's 4 apprentices who walk down the path of the dark side, but in my opinion are never true rule of 2 Sith. For example, when Maul was being used by Palpatine, Palpatine still had Darth Plagueis as his master. Maul was essentially a pet project. Now, that doesn't necessarily describe his skill and put him in a box. I do think, however, it is somewhat illustrative of his place within the universe. I do think certain parts of the Clone Wars made Maul feel a little too powerful, but his battle with Ahsoka at the end of Season 7 felt about right for me. I don't think even at his prime, Maul was a match for the best Jedi combatants of the era, but again, he did beat Qui-Gon Jinn, and that's not worth forgetting. Ventress, however, I think has a little less credibility than Darth Maul. She is even more so just a pet project. Not even a pet project of Palpatine, but a pet project of Dooku, who himself was never really Palpatine's true apprentice. Ventress, however, doesn't even really warrant discussion in this context because in my opinion, she is leagues below the other entrants, and we do even see Dooku versus Ventress and Savage in the Clone Wars, and Dooku handled handles Ventress quite easily. She's a skilled assassin, she's an attack dog like Maul, but especially when it comes to force strength, I don't think she has any chance against any of the characters on this list. And just a bit of a spoiler alert, she will be coming in the number 4 spot, the least powerful of these 4 combatants. Alright, so next up in the order that I've created in my head, we've got a very difficult to evaluate individual, and that is Ben Solo, aka Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren has such incredible power, mostly because of his pedigree. He probably has, perhaps save for Asajj, the least amount of training on this list, but he is, in my opinion, by far the most gifted in the Force. And it's difficult because when talking about whether Prime Kylo or just Kylo Ren generally, a lot of what we have to go off of is based on how characters react to him, his place overall in the story, where there are fewer sort of on-screen depictions of his skill. I will say I think people are a little too dismissive of Kylo's power. Whether you like the character or not, I don't think his battle with Rey is really illustrative of Kylo at his prime. For one, he's obviously sustained a major injury, he's just killed his father, mentally he's not all there, and by the time you get to episode 9, he's easily able to defeat Rey at Water Endor. However, he's basically turned to the light side at the last moment, which stops him from achieving victory. But again, Kylo's power largely comes from his pedigree, as I mentioned, his place within the Skywalker bloodline, and really, let's be frank, as a main character in the Star Wars saga. He's powerful enough that both Snoke and Luke are astonished by his raw power and potential.
I've seen this raw strength only once before, in Ben Solo. It didn't scare me enough then. It does now.
But the main downside is obviously Kylo Ren has much less training than especially Count Dooku. This I think would probably most obviously manifest in dueling. Kylo I don't think would have any problem competing with Jedi Masters of the prequel era when it comes to force power, but in dueling, he's gonna fall behind. He began training however at the age of 10, giving him about 20 years of tutelage between both Luke Skywalker and Snoke, plus maybe a tiny bit under Palpatine. So I don't think at his prime, which I imagine would be at episode 9, he's quite as raw as some people think. Let's move on now to Count Dooku, and in my opinion, Count Dooku is the opposite of Kylo. I think he lacks the once-in-a-generation type power that Kylo clearly has. However, he makes up for it by being one of the most well-trained and famous knights and later masters of his entire era. There's no doubt that Dooku is an incredibly deadly warrior. I already mentioned him taking on Asajj and Ventress in a 2-on-1 battle, but of course he also fights Obi-Wan and Anakin at the beginning of the Clone Wars, though I will mention that was when they were far from their own primes as well. If you read the Revenge of the Sith novelization or other works which detail Dooku's relationship with Palpatine especially, you'll know that Palpatine never saw Dooku as a true apprentice. That was partially because of his age, but he never had anywhere near the potential or the power of Anakin, which is why he was seen as a useful tool or perhaps a stopgap apprentice rather than any true rule of two Sith, at least to Palpatine. Still, that's not to diminish Dooku's overall abilities. Even in his 80s, he was one of the most deadly men in the galaxy. Now, this list does ask for his prime. I'm going to take it as his prime while he's a dark side user. That may be his prime overall, I'm not sure. But again, compared to Kylo, his abilities are very different. He is very strong in the Force. We see him basically ragdoll Obi-Wan Kenobi in Revenge of the Sith, but his true abilities lie in the sword. He's one of the best duelists of the Jedi Order. However, as we see in his fight with Yoda, which I do believe he would have lost had he not had Anakin and Obi-Wan to use basically as bait, and even in the Revenge of the Sith novelization in his duel against Anakin, in longer duels, he doesn't have the same Force reserves. He doesn't have the same natural gift as a generational talent. And I'm going to sort of seamlessly transition now into my actual ranking, and I'll talk more about Dooku later. I think you may have guessed by the way I've structured this video that I do think there's a pretty clear gap between the bottom bottom 2 on this list and the top 2. I think Ventress pretty obviously comes in at number 4. Then at number 3 comes Darth Maul. Darth Maul is a great warrior, but he is nowhere near the force potential of either Dooku or Kylo, and I don't think his lightsaber skills bring him over the edge. When it comes to Dooku versus Kylo, this would be a very, very interesting fight. I've talked about the once-in-a-generational abilities that Kylo has versus the incredible mastery and perhaps generational lightsaber skills of Dooku. Again, he was one of the best duelists in the entire Jedi Order. Dooku also has a lot more training fighting other lightsaber wielders. The thing that I just keep coming back to, though, is that this is Star Wars and that the Skywalkers are special. That's the entire point of Star Wars. Maybe that's not a fun way to do a versus video, but there's a reason that each child in the Skywalker lineage is targeted by Palpatine as an apprentice. So although I don't think there's necessarily as much concrete evidence pointing to Kylo's raw power, I think the way he's treated by Palpatine, Snoke, and Luke is illustrative of that. And if you're taking Kylo in his prime, I gotta give it to him. It's going to be controversial, but I think Kylo walks out of that matchup against Dooku, partially because maybe I'm invoking main character energy for him. But the Skywalker saga is basically the Skywalkers have main character energy, and that's codified in the lore. I think it's kind of similar with what we see between Anakin and Dooku in episode 3. Dooku is probably technically the better duelist, but Anakin just has so much more raw power that he pushes Dooku past his limits. And you do see that in the episode 3 novelization, which describes both Anakin and Dooku especially's thought process during that bout. And in the end, Anakin wins that easily. Now, is Kylo at Anakin's power? No, nowhere near. And I do think at his prime he is strong enough to win this, but only 5.25 times out of 10. So Kylo gets the slight edge because of his raw power. Dooku comes in at number 2, but just barely. And I will say again, this is Sith old man Dooku. Maybe Dooku at his younger prime, if that's different, would be a different outcome. But I also think it'd be interesting to see how Dooku reacts to somebody completely trained in a different type of Jedi Order than he was. Someone on my Twitter made a really good point. A lot of the people that Dooku fights are people he was involved with training, the apprentices of people he trained, all within the same order. Kylo Ren is a different beast. He's got different powers. He's got a different lightsaber fighting technique. But I don't know, I'm sure this will be controversial. My voice is going. I'm still a little bit sick, so I'm going to end this video here. Let me know your guys' thoughts down below. I'm sure you will. Until next time, have a good one, be safe, and may the Force be with you.